My name is Dorothy Campbell. I'm 104 years old. I was born in 1920. I have lived through the Great Depression, World War II, the Cold War, and 13 different presidents. And I'm going to tell you something that will save you decades of misery. It took me 85 years to stop caring what people think. 85 years of torture. 85 years of living someone else's life instead of my own. Those 85 years nearly killed me. Literally. But the day I stopped caring what people think, everything changed, and I mean everything. Yesterday, my great-grandson Tyler visited me. He's 25 years old, smart kid, college graduate, good job, but he's miserable. Grandma Dot, he said, I hate my life. I'm living exactly the way everyone expects me to live, but I'm dying inside. I looked at this young man and saw myself at his age, trapped by other people's expectations, suffocating under the weight of everyone else's opinions. Tyler, I said, let me tell you what it cost me to care what people think and what it gave me when I finally stopped. He leaned forward, ready to listen. Let me start at the beginning. I was 15 years old. My mother was obsessed with what the neighbors thought. Dorothy, stand up straight. What will people think? Dorothy, don't laugh so loud. What will people think? Dorothy, wear the blue dress, not the red one. What will people think? Every decision in our house was made based on other people's imaginary opinions. I learned early that my job was to make other people comfortable with my existence. The first lesson in caring what people think, you disappear. I was 20 years old. I wanted to go to college, study journalism, maybe write for newspapers, but my father had other ideas. Dorothy, nice girls don't need college. What will people think if you're not married by 25? Women writers are strange, unmarried, lonely. Is that what you want people to say about you? I gave up college to avoid judgment. The second lesson in caring what people think, you sacrifice your dreams. I met James. He was handsome, stable, came from a good family. I didn't love him, but everyone said he was perfect for me. Dorothy, James is such a catch. You'd be foolish to let him go. What would people think if you turned down such a good proposal? I married James because everyone expected me to. The third lesson in caring what people think, you marry the wrong person. Our wedding was beautiful. Everyone said so. I smiled in all the photos, played the happy bride. But on my wedding night, I cried in the bathroom for an hour. I just committed my life to pleasing everyone except myself. I was pregnant. Everyone was thrilled. A baby? How wonderful. You'll be such a good mother, Dorothy. But I wasn't ready to be a mother. I wanted to travel, to work, to figure out who I was. But what would people think if I wasn't maternal enough? So I pretended to be excited about motherhood. The fourth lesson in caring what people think, you fake your feelings. My daughter Susan was born in 1944. Beautiful, healthy baby. I loved her, but I also resented her. She represented the end of any possibility of living my own life. But mothers aren't supposed to feel resentment. What would people think? So I buried those feelings and played the perfect mother. Our son Michael was born. 2 children by age 26. Everyone said I was living the dream. I felt like I was living a nightmare. But a nightmare designed by committee. Every choice I made was filtered through other people's expectations. How to dress the children, where to shop for groceries, what activities to join, which church to attend. Nothing was my actual preference. Everything was calculated to meet other people's approval. We moved to the suburbs, bigger house, better neighborhood. Everyone said we were moving up in the world. But the new neighborhood had even more rules, more expectations, more people to please. I had to join the right committees, befriend the right women, host the right parties. I became an expert at reading social cues, anticipating what people wanted, delivering what they expected. The fifth lesson in caring what people think, you become a performance. Susan started school. I volunteered for everything. PTA president, bake sale coordinator, classroom mother. Not because I enjoyed these activities, but because that's what good mothers did. And I desperately needed people to think I was a good mother. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, resentful, but everyone said I was so dedicated, so involved, so admirable. So I kept volunteering for things I hated. Michael was struggling in school. The teacher suggested he might need special help. But what would people think if my son wasn't perfect? Instead of getting him help, I hired tutors in secret, made him practice at home until he cried. I was more concerned about my reputation than my son's well-being. The sixth lesson in caring what people think: you sacrifice your children. James got promoted, big raise, everyone congratulated us. But the promotion meant moving across the country, away from everything familiar. I didn't want to move. But what would people think if I held back my husband's career? So we moved. I started over in a new place with new people to impress. The seventh lesson in caring what people think: you have no control over your life. I was 50 years old, empty nest, both children in college. For the first time in decades, I had space to think about what I wanted. I realized I had no idea who I was. I'd spent 30 years being who everyone else wanted me to be. I didn't know my own preferences, my own opinions, my own dreams. I was a stranger to myself, but starting over at 50, what would people think? So I continued the performance, found new roles to play. Susan got divorced, scandal in those days. She called me crying, needed support, understanding. But I was worried about what people would think about our family. Instead of supporting her, I lectured her about trying harder, about what divorce would do to our reputation. She stopped calling me for advice. The eighth lesson in caring what people think: you lose your children's trust. James retired. We were supposed to enjoy our golden years, but I realized we had nothing in common. We'd never really known each other. Our entire marriage had been a public performance. We sat at breakfast reading separate newspapers, lived parallel lives in the same house. But what would people think if we divorced after 38 years? So we stayed married, miserable but respectable. I turned 65, officially old. Society had new expectations for me. Be dignified, graceful, wise. Don't complain about aches and pains. Don't talk too much about the past. Don't be a burden. I learned the rules of acceptable aging. The ninth lesson in caring what people think: it never ends. There are always new expectations. My mother died. She was 94. At her funeral, person after person told me what a wonderful woman she was. So proper, so dignified, never a hair out of place. But I knew the truth. She'd been miserable, anxious, constantly worried about appearances. She died without ever living as herself. And I was following the same path. Michael got married, big wedding. Everyone said it was beautiful. But Michael looked miserable. He was marrying someone his friends approved of, not someone he loved. I wanted to talk to him, to tell him not to make my mistakes. But what would people think if I interfered? So I kept quiet. Watched my son repeat my patterns. I turned 80, milestone birthday, big party. Everyone said I was so lucky to live so long, so blessed. But I felt like I'd wasted 80 years living for other people. I'd never traveled where I wanted to go, never pursued interests that excited me, never said what I really thought. I'd lived 8 decades as a people pleaser, and pleased no one, least of all myself. That night, alone in my bedroom, I made a decision. I was going to die soon, maybe this year, maybe next year, but soon, and I refused to die without ever having lived as myself. The 10th lesson in caring what people think: eventually, you run out of time to please everyone. I was 81 years old. James had been dead for 3 years. I was living alone for the first time in my adult life, and I started an experiment. What if I stopped caring what people thought? What if I said what I actually believed? What if I did what I actually wanted? What if I became myself? It started small. The church ladies invited me to their weekly coffee clatch. Gossipy women who spent hours talking about other people's business. For 40 years, I'd attended these gatherings, nodded along, contributed appropriate comments. This time, I said no. I don't enjoy gossip, I told them. I won't be coming anymore. They were shocked, offended. Dorothy, what's gotten into you? But something amazing happened. I didn't die from their disapproval. I felt lighter, freer, more like myself. My neighbor asked me to babysit her grandchildren. Again. For years, I'd said yes to these requests even though I was tired and didn't enjoy childcare anymore. This time, I said no. I'm not available, I told her. Simple, direct, honest. She was hurt, angry. I never thought you were selfish, Dorothy. But I didn't collapse from her criticism. I felt relieved. Susan invited me to Christmas, but she had rules. Don't talk politics. Don't mention her divorce. Don't ask about her dating life. Don't criticize her parenting. Basically, don't be myself. For decades, I'd followed these rules. Bitten my tongue. Performed the role of acceptable mother. This time, I spoke honestly. Susan, I love you, but I'm not going to pretend anymore. If you want a relationship with the real me, I'm here. If you want the fake version, find someone else. She was furious. We didn't speak for 6 months, but when she finally called, something had changed. Mom, I want to know the real you. I was 84 years old, started taking art classes, something I'd wanted to do for 60 years but worried was frivolous, impractical, strange for someone my age. The other students were mostly young. They looked at me curiously. Isn't it wonderful that Dorothy is staying active? They whispered. But I wasn't staying active. I was staying alive. For the first time, my paintings were terrible. I didn't care. I was doing something because I wanted to, not because anyone expected it. It felt revolutionary. This was the year everything changed. I was 85 years old. My doctor told me I needed surgery. Gallbladder, routine procedure, he said. But at 85, no surgery is routine. As they wheeled me into the operating room, I had a realization. I might die today. And if I did, what would my life have meant? 85 years of worrying about what people thought. 85 years of performing instead of living. I'd been so busy being what everyone else wanted that I'd never been myself. That was my breaking point. When I woke up from surgery, I made a vow. Whatever time I had left, I would live it as myself. Completely, unapologetically, authentically. No more performances, no more pretending, no more caring what people thought. I was 85 years old. If I couldn't be myself now, when could I? The surgery recovery took 3 months. During that time, I did a lot of thinking. I thought about all the opinions that had controlled my life. My parents' opinions about marriage and motherhood. My neighbors' opinions about proper behavior. My friends' opinions about acceptable activities. My children's opinions about how mothers should act. Society's opinions about women, wives, mothers, elderly people. Thousands of opinions. None of them mine. And I realized something shocking. Most of these people whose opinions had controlled my life, they were dead. My parents were dead. Most of my neighbors were dead. My husband was dead. I'd spent decades worrying about what dead people thought. But even the living people whose opinions I'd prioritized, did their opinions actually matter? Did their approval make me happy? Did their disapproval really hurt me? Or had I been afraid of something that wasn't even real? When I recovered from surgery, I tested this theory. I started speaking honestly, acting authentically, making choices based on my preferences, not other people's expectations. And you know what happened? Some people disapproved, some people were shocked, some people were offended, and I didn't die. I didn't lose everything. I didn't become a social outcast. I didn't suffer the terrible consequences I'd been afraid of for 85 years. Most people didn't even notice my changes. They were too busy worrying about their own lives, and the people who did notice, the ones who disapproved, I realized I didn't actually care about their opinions. I'd been afraid of imaginary judgments from people whose approval I didn't even want. I was 86, started traveling, alone. I'd always wanted to see Europe, but James hadn't been interested, and what would people think about a woman traveling alone? I booked a trip to Italy, 2 weeks, by myself. My children were horrified. Mother, you're 86 years old. You can't travel alone. What if something happens? Then something happens, I said. Italy was magnificent. I saw art I dreamed about for decades, ate food that made me cry, met fascinating people. I felt alive in a way I'd never experienced. On my last night in Rome, I sat in a cafe drinking wine and watching people, and I thought, this is what I've been missing, this feeling of being fully present in my own life. Started writing stories about my life, my real thoughts, my actual experiences. I'd always loved writing, but had been told it wasn't practical. What would people think about a woman my age starting a writing career? I didn't care anymore. I wrote about the cost of caring what people think, about the price of living for others' approval. Local newspaper published some of my pieces. Readers responded strongly. Apparently, many people were trapped by the same fears that had controlled me for 85 years. Michael got divorced. He was 64 years old. He called me, devastated. Mom, everyone thinks I'm crazy, leaving a stable marriage at my age, but I can't pretend anymore. Good, I said. He was shocked. Good? Michael, I spent 85 years pretending. It nearly killed me. Don't waste another day living for other people's approval. We had the most honest conversation we'd had in decades. Started volunteering at a women's shelter. Not because it looked good, because it mattered to me. I talked to women who were trapped by abusive partners, but also trapped by shame, by fear of judgment. What will people think if I leave him? What will people say about my children growing up without a father? What will my family think about divorce? I recognized their prison. I'd lived in the same one for most of my life. The people who judge you for leaving an abusive situation aren't your people, I told them. I was 90 years old. Susan threw me a birthday party, but this party was different from previous celebrations. Instead of performing the role of gracious elderly lady, I was just myself. I told stories, real stories, about my mistakes, my regrets, my discoveries. I laughed loudly, said exactly what I thought, didn't worry about offending anyone, and something amazing happened. People were drawn to me. They wanted to know more about my journey, my transformation. They were hungry for authenticity in a world full of performance. I was 95, started a blog about aging authentically. My great-grandchildren helped me set it up. I wrote about the freedom that comes with age, the permission to stop caring what people think. The blog went viral, thousands of readers, letters from people around the world, women who'd spent decades people-pleasing, men trapped by expectations of success, young people already exhausted by social media performance, all of them asking the same question: how do I stop caring what people think? The pandemic. I was 100 years old. Everyone was stuck at home, isolated. Many people were reevaluating their lives. What really mattered? Who were they really living for? I wasn't afraid of the virus. I'd already learned the most important lesson about mortality. We're all going to die. The only question is whether we'll live first. Living for other people's approval isn't living, it's performing. And performance is exhausting. I was 103. Tyler, my great-grandson, graduated college. He got a job offer from a prestigious company. Good salary, impressive title, everything his parents wanted for him. But the job required him to move across the country, away from friends, away from the woman he loved. What should I do, Grandma Dot? He asked. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to stay here, start my own business, marry Sarah, have a simple life. But what will people think if I turn down this opportunity? I laughed, not at him, at the familiar refrain. Tyler, let me tell you what people will think. They'll think whatever they're going to think regardless of what you do. If you take the job, some people will admire your ambition. Others will think you're selling out. If you don't take the job, some people will think you're lazy. Others will think you're wise. People's opinions about your choices say more about them than about you. The real question isn't what will people think. The real question is, what will you think when you're my age? Tyler turned down the job, started his own business, married Sarah last month. At the wedding, he gave a speech. My great-grandmother taught me that the only opinion that matters is the one you'll have about your choices when you're 104 years old. That's when I knew my lesson had been learned. I'm 104 years old. For 85 years, I lived in prison. A prison made of other people's opinions. The walls were fear. The bars were expectations. The guards were shame and judgment. But here's what I learned. The prison door was never locked. I could have walked out any time. The only thing keeping me trapped was my belief that other people's opinions mattered more than my own life. They don't. They never did. Most people are too busy worrying about what others think of them to judge you as harshly as you fear. And the people who do judge harshly, their opinions reveal their own insecurities, not your failures. The day I stopped caring what people think, everything changed. I started traveling, creating art, speaking honestly, living authentically. I formed deeper relationships, made real friends, discovered who I actually was. I became interesting instead of acceptable. I chose adventure over approval. I picked authenticity over admiration. And for the first time in my life, I was truly happy. Not because everyone approved of me, but because I finally approved of myself. The 19 years since I stopped caring what people think have been the best years of my life. More fulfilling than the previous 85 years combined. That's what it cost me to care what people think. 85 years of my life. And that's what it gave me to stop caring. Everything I'd been missing. You don't have to wait until you're 85 to free yourself from this prison. You can walk out today. Stop asking, what will people think? Start asking, what will I think when I'm 104 years old? The answer will set you free.